passar agora para o Anselmo, que vai trabalhar com a Amit para demonstrar a simulação para vocês.
Obrigado, Daniel. Bem, obrigado a todos. Bem, primeiro eu gostaria de apresentar o Amit. Ele é um dos mais renomados instrutores no Cyber Range. Nós estamos desenvolvendo aqui na CECyber um programa para treinamento dos treinadores, né? Que um dos nossos objetivos é não só capacitar os profissionais, mas também preparar os profissionais que treinam esses profissionais. O que eu queria deixar um pouquinho na atenção de vocês é o quão vasto é o alcance da ferramenta, né? Eu, como um aluno do Amit, fiquei encantado. Na verdade, eu tenho essa experiência da parte de cyber, já fui técnico, desde os anos 2000 venho carregando, fui gestor também de grandes instituições financeiras. E ao me deparar, né, com o dia a dia, com o treinamento, um simples cenário, digamos que simples, porque muitas vezes o cenário ele é apresentado com uma resolução de 30 minutos, a gente consegue aplicar um programa inteiro de treinamento. Por quê? Esse treinamento não só lidam com as competências, né, para a solução de um problema, mas são os treinamentos que envolvem o teamwork, a comunicação entre as equipes, a gestão de crise. Então, a gente consegue embarcar em um cenário de 30 minutos, um treinamento de dias, horas, semanas, né? E é isso que eu queria tentar passar para vocês, né? Que realmente nós estamos encantados em participar, em poder contribuir, né, junto com a sociedade, junto com as instituições para o desenvolvimento desse tema. Ok? Are you ready?
So first of all, hello everyone. My name is Amit again. I'm a trainer from CyberBit. I'm actually here to train the people of CECyber on this platform, to show them all the trainings and to make sure that they know how to practice the scenarios, how to train people over these scenarios. I'm just going to show you, just a second. This one? Just press a slide. Yeah, we have just one. No, that one? Yes, but just one slide. So. There it is. Okay, there we go. So I wanted to talk to you about first a bit like a deeper understanding of the network that we work with, at least one of the networks. Just to get a bit of more technical explanation about what's going on and how things are actually happening. So as Gilad mentions, we have like, basically the simulator is made of two different layers. We have external layer, which is basically the platform, the servers that holds the application, all the frame for the training itself. But then we have the internal network, which is the network that is part of the game, let's call it. So this network that can be changed, of course, is the network that actually is being attacked. Okay, something is going to happen to that network, and the trainees, according to the scenario, according to the alerts and things that are happening, need to get few things in the end. First of all, to understand what's going on. The second thing is to try to put a finger of who's the attacker. How did it get in? What security holes do we have in the architecture of the network that allow the attacker to get in the first place? Which is also a very important part of each training that we have. in the end, of course, after they understood everything that there is, they need to clean this network and to close all the security gaps that we have. If, for example, we had a misconfigured firewall rule, of course, they need to fix it, maybe to update some of the servers. So they need to think about all the things that they can improve in the security of the network to make sure that this kind of event could not happen again. So just a bit about the network. This is the largest network that we work with and run scenarios on. We call it the IP network. It simulates a mid-sized company network. It is made of only virtual stations. I'm not sure if you're familiar or not, but the fact that they are virtual does not mean that they are not real. This is a real functioning network. You can access each and every one of these stations, these servers, these computers. You need to access each and every one of them during your investigation and investigate them. We have like different segments, just like a regular company would have. We have a user segment that simulates regular employees that we have in a company. We have server segment that contains all the regular servers that's a regular company is going to have. If it's a domain controller, a mail server, shared file, a Centrify, DHCP, anything that you can think of. We also have a DMZ segment, a segment that on one hand is part of the company, but on the other hand, it's like servers that we want to have access from the outside. For example, web servers. We have here a CNN, BBC simulated, and Fox News. And we also have a segment that simulates the internet. So this environment is isolated. Of course, we work with malwares. We don't want anything to be leaked online and things like this. So it's isolated. And we have a segment that simulates the regular internet. Now, besides of the fact that all these machines are virtual and they are real, the trainees need to access them, another important thing to mention about this network is that it is also alive. So all the components that we have in here are communicating with each other. Again, this network is completely real. Machines talking with the servers, getting information, users sending emails, users browsing the internet, people from the internet browsing our websites. So if we will check, and I will show you the firewall logs, we can see that it is full of logs and information, packets, information that being sent in and out from the network. This is important because it means that the traffic that you work with, the information that you work with this network is not only related to the attack. It means that the trainees have to find the specific events and alerts and packets that are being sent that are malicious in all this like pool of information that they have inside this network. Do you have any questions? So in general, the security tools that we work with, the network security tools that we work with in here are, we have SIEM. As a SIEM, we have QRadar. We have here Palo Alto Firewall. We also have a Snort in this network, an IDS IPS system. Not sure if you're familiar with it or not. And another tool called Xenos. Of course, we also have a deep investigation for machine tools like sysinternals tools, if you're familiar with it. Disassemblers, decoders, anything that you can think of, all of the tools that the trainees are going to need in order to investigate the things that are happening in the network. So one more thing to talk about is the attacks. So this network is real, but besides the fact that this network is real, the attacks are real. It means that our automated attack server holds a script that runs the real commands that attacker would run in a regular attack. So if we have a brute force attack, he uses the real tools that an attacker would use to attack the network. It means that everything here is hyper-realistic to the top. It also means that we have, of course, a lot more than one way to solve a scenario. For example, a trainee could find something in the firewall logs, another one can find in the authentication logs of the server, another one could use a tool that he is used to work with. So this system, the investigation methods are very versatile, which is important because we can match the way that we perform this training to the investigation methods of your organizations or the organizations that the trainees are coming from. Do you have any questions about the network? about the platform? Anything? Yes. Okay. So we also have a SCADA segment over here. This segment is not completely full because when we run SCADA scenarios, we also have a SCADA box. Basically a box that simulates regular SCADA. It has fans to simulate like turbines. It has 2 PLCs. We have currently, I'm not sure, 3-4 scenarios for SCADA trainings to simulate attacks on or the way that cyber attacks can also affect SCADA infrastructure. So we can attack, we have 2 PLCs in this, and of course it is getting connected to the network, and we run scenarios and attacks on this platform as well. Okay, more questions? No. So I think I'm going to show you once there is one scenario running right now. I'm going to show you, to brief you through the scenario, to show you how does it look like, how the machine are looking like, and what the trainee is expected to do to solve a scenario. Just a second. I need to open another window and then I will share it. Don't worry.
Pessoal, aqui ele está acessando a plataforma remota, né? Aquela que está simulando alguém externo à companhia, mas a experiência é a mesma.
So what I just connected into is actually the trainee screen. This is what he sees when a training is started. On top, you can see you have this banner that tells him how much time has passed since the beginning of the scenario. He, of course, have access to the map of the network that he can access every time. We also have all the information that he's going to need about the network, if it's operating systems, IP addresses, usernames, passwords. And basically every scenario begins with the trainee. Of course, the trainees don't know the name of the scenario and they don't know what's going to happen, just like in the real world. They need to sit down and monitor the different tools, the different systems that they have, and try to figure out what's going on. In this specific scenario, the first alerts that the trainees are going to see are these 2 alerts. We have a port scanning detected in our QRadar, which is our SIM system, basically an alert system. We have a port scanning detected. A port scanning is where attacker tries to send different packets to different ports and to see for a specific server or a machine which ports are open, which ports he can use to get access inside. So we see this port scanning event from this IP address that comes from the internet to this IP address. Just a second. To this IP address, which is one of our servers, one of our Apache web servers, okay? And we can also see another event that we have in here, password guessing detected. Password guessing, you also know it as brute force, is when somebody tries to log in using different usernames and password, common used usernames and passwords a few times in a row to see if it can get access inside. This alert is important, but it is only tells us that we have an attempt. We don't know if this attempt was successful or not. The next step would be go and check. We need to log into this server. Okay. Now we are inside. We need to check, and the first thing would be to try to understand if this brute force attempt was successful or not. We have a specific log file that holds all the authentication attempts and information that we had on this server. So we can go and check. So as you can see, this file is pretty big. We can try filtering using the IP address that we saw of the attacker to see what did he do on this server. Okay, so in here we can see some few interesting things. We can see, first of all, failed password for root from the IP address of the attacker that we just saw. Failed password, failed password, failed password. But in the end, we can see that we have few accepted password attempts. It means that eventually, after the brute force, he found the password that he was looking for, and he managed to get access to this server. The next thing we try to understand, what was he doing? I mean, why did he get inside? Because we didn't see any more alerts. We don't have anything that is not working, at least according to our systems. You know what? Let's try to browse to the website, this Apache website that was attacked, and to see if it's functioning correctly or not. And apparently it's not. So it's supposed to be a BBC website, and this does not look like a BBC website. You have been hacked by the automatic red team. Okay, interesting. We need to check to see if we can see how did he do it? What did he exactly change on the system? So there are a few ways to do it. One way is just to check all the last modified files on the systems. It can take a bit more time. If the trainees are experienced a bit with web servers, they know that we have a default location for a default page for a web server, which be in here. var www. Inside, we can see that we have our default BBC server. Okay. Now we have lots of files inside. Let's see what were the last modified files on this in this directory. And today we only have two files that were modified. We have this hack2z.png. PNG is an extension for a photo. And we have this index.html. Let's try to read this index.html. And it's the title of the website. You have been hacked. It is using the hack2z PNG password, photo. And he actually defaced our website by switching the default web page of the website that's supposed to be just like a regular BBC website. He changed it to this defaced web page. It's important for us to understand if this is the only thing that he do. This is the only location that we have these files in or not. And after deeper investigation, the trainees are supposed to find their way to this folder over here, this TMP folder. Inside we have another directory called working dir. And inside we can find these two created files. Now, one thing about the TMP folder is that the TMP folder is a very common location or directory for attackers to use when they get into a system. Why? Because the TMP folder no matter what your privileges are as a user, the TMP folder is privileges-less directory. Anyone can write anything in this directory. So attackers very commonly use this because they don't need to understand if they have permissions to do things or not. They can just write things over here. So this is exactly what the attacker do. So he first of all put these files over here. He found our default web page. He changed it to this one, and he got out. When we have a web defacement event, it's important to understand what is the purpose, why the attacker is doing what he is doing. And in many cases, when you have a web defacement event, it's more like showing off. The attacker, first of all, wants to show that he managed to access our servers. Sometimes he wants to make people get scared, okay? For example, if he hacks like a government websites and he changed them to a defaced website, it can cause people around the country to fear. These are the main purposes that the attacker could have for doing this. Now, after the trainee find everything that there is to find, of course, he needs to clean all these files from the system to bring back the website to the original website. And at this point, we take the trainees and we have a discussion about what went wrong in the network security that allowed the attacker to get in the first place. So let's try to go step by step what the attacker was doing to see how could we stop him at that step exactly. So the first thing that he was doing is to run a port scan event, to run a port scan on our system. He was looking for an open port. Now, it's nice that we have like a port scanning alert in the SIEM, but we could maybe have an automatic response. So when somebody tries to scan more than, let's say, 10 ports at a very short amount of time, just block him. Don't allow him to continue his scanning. So this is one thing that we could do. Now, the output of this port scanning was that port 22, the one that he used to log inside, was open. This is the port that is used for, commonly used for SSH, if you know it. And if we will see what open ports do we have for this server, so we do have port 80 and 443, which are used for web browsing, which makes sense because it's a web page. But we also have port 22 open. Now that's a question, why would this SSH port for remote access would be open just like that for everyone? If we will look at the firewall policy, we can see that it allows internet users from the internet to browse to pages in our DMZ server, allows any IP address to access every IP address that he wants in every port that he wants, which is pretty bad configuration, because even though if I want to have a remote access, but I can do it for specific IP addresses for our technical support guys, not allow everyone to get in. So fixing this firewall rule is part of the scenario for the trainees. Now, the fact that, let's go back to, okay. Now, let's see how many attempts that it took the attacker to find our password. So we had one failed authentication failure, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 attempts, which is pretty easy for him. it means that our password was not that strong, or at least it was a very common password. So another thing that would be to change the default password for root. Root is the strongest user that we have on a Linux server. So the fact that he has such an easy password, to crack, is a very bad configuration of the network. So this is another thing that could do. And one more thing would of course be to maybe generate an alert when somebody changes the default web page, so we can change an alert and we didn't have to look in the dark. That's a good question. And I think the answer would be, it depends on the way that the attacker tries to crack the password. Because most attackers today try to do what we call, let's call it a dictionary attack, or a specified brute force. It means that we take like a text file that holds a very common used passwords, and we just test all of them. It would be like ABC123, like general passwords that everybody uses would be in this text file. If you would have like, let's say a gibberish, like characters that you just type, it will be harder for him to do it that way, or even impossible, because nobody would have this password as a combination. But there is another way to conduct a brute force, which is literally try all the options that you have in the keyboard. Now, this could take it could take months and sometimes years, but eventually by using this method, eventually the attacker would get the password. But why? Because if I will try every possible combination, in the end, I'm going to succeed. Now, the way we can avoid this is to say that, okay, if I have 5 failed attempts in a row from the same IP address, just block the IP address from logging in. Of course. And this is also another thing that we suggest to do. We could do it in the snort system that we have, IDS, which have rules to be configured exactly like this. Yeah. Your password. Correct.
Yes, the point is, it seems to be so easy to block a hacker. How they break through?
So this brute force is actually only one of many methods that attackers could have to get access inside of a server. So brute force is one, and it's a very simple and basic one. Okay, and this is a very basic scenario. So just other ways that could be is to perform some kind of an injection. Okay, SQL injection, if you heard of it. We have a scenario that talks about SQL injection, whereby inserting specific characters and understanding the mechanism of the SQL queries that we have in a specific platform, I could first of all extract data and sometimes change data inside and get access to a specific server. This is just one more way that I can think of. Sometimes we have servers or protocols that are not updated, and we have specific exploits or vulnerabilities in these platforms that allows the attacker to get inside. There are endless ways, and attackers keep finding more ways to get inside.
Can I assume that this basic way to hack at a platform, it's a base scenario, but nobody nobody hacked a system through this, just trying to find the password. So it's so basic that even I
I
can block it.
Of course. So Of course, and it's important to mention that we have the scenarios that we have in here comes in different difficulty levels. Okay, so we have entry level for people that are just getting into this cyber security field, but we have a lot harder scenarios. Of course, I mean, we have scenario, just as Gilad said, so we have more complicated. I mean, sometimes the attacker have a lot more steps on his way to getting what he wanted. So we have a lot more stations to investigate. He uses more sophisticated concepts. We also have scenarios to, again, as Gilad mentioned, of malware analysis scenarios. For example, when a trainee does not get a complete network, he gets only one station that got infected with the malware, and he needs to reverse engineer the malware in order to understand what's going on. So he has to be a really good coder to get these scenarios done. We also have, as Gilad mentioned, pen testing scenarios where the trainees actually solve the scenario as the attacker. For example, I give them one Kali Linux machine, which is a pen testing, very common pen testing tool or operating system. I tell them, okay, you have this network. Eventually, you need to get domain admin privileges, the highest privileges that you can have in an organization. Good luck. Do whatever you can to get these privileges back, to get the highest access, the highest privileges user that you can. So this is one example. We also have a pen testing scenario where the trainee needs to infiltrate a file to a filtering system. So again, it really differs at first of all the ability that we want to practice right now, and of course the difficulty level of the same scenario. Any questions that you have?
In this demonstration, you're showing us the monitoring system, okay, in terms of range. But I suppose that when you implement this range tool, you could configure all ports, all system to avoid this attack, correct?
Yes. This network is misconfigured on purpose. Okay, so again, this network have security holes and it is misconfigured like tiny little gaps and holes on purpose. Because of course, if everything was perfect, then nobody could get in, but not network is perfect. In the real world, nothing is perfect. And even if we have a properly configured firewall rules, for example, so sometimes we have scenarios that do this. Sometimes an employee in the company downloads something, or he opens something, or inserted, and he actually invited the attacker inside. So even if everything is configured properly in the network, eventually the user did something that allowed the attacker to get inside. So we have like so many ways to attack a network. So nothing is totally perfect. Okay.
In terms of the companies that you have been implemented this range tool, do you have an historical information about the strong attacks and what happened after that? Or in other words, how this tool could avoid immediately this attack, and what kind of advantage that company had because they implemented this?
You're talking about implemented the Cyber Range? So the Cyber Range is a training tool, okay? All the scenarios that we have are, we took the concepts from real attacks that happen in the real world. So of course, every time that we run a scenario, we try to make it, to connect it as we can to the real world. And sometimes I, as a trainer, like had a discussion and talked with the trainees and tell them stories about the real attack, how did it happen in the real world, what people did to stop it. And in here, we actually practice how to stop it. Like we change the configuration, we reconfigure, we clean the network, we update systems, we recreate rules, just like the people did when the real attack occurred in the real world. Okay?
I have a couple of questions. We're with the insurance side, so we are not only interested in preventing the attack, but also on a forensic side to be able to document that an attack took place in order to be able to pay a claim, for example. So my question is, and we had situations in which when the hacker is successful, he will also erase the log files. So, and I know this is a simple scenario, but how would you be able to first detect if a hacker was able to breach the network security, and by erasing the log files, you may have a clue that something happened because you don't see a log file, but if you if you have no information to look into, how do you know if your network is secure? And from the insurance side, how would you be able to have evidence that something happened, in a sense that then you would have the necessary information to indemnify a cybersecurity claim, for example?
Okay, so that's a good question. So two things. First of all, it's interesting that you said that, because we also have the ability as a trainer. I can choose for each scenarios to, for example, delete the logs. So the attacker can actually delete for each scenario. I can choose if I want the attacker to delete the logs or not. Okay, so a few things. First of all, we have different kinds of ways to do things. So, for example, if you would delete the logs from the server itself, one thing that I would suggest is, first of all, we have the SIEM system over here, and the way that the SIEM system works, it actually takes the logs from different servers, so it can correlate data and then eventually like generate alerts. By doing this, it means that the SIEM system also saves a copy of the logs. Okay, so even if the attacker got into a specific server and deleted the logs from there, I still have some kind of a copy in the SIEM system. Again, as I said, we have more than one way to solve the scenario. So maybe not specifically in this scenario, but again, we have different types of logs. We have different types of configurations in the network that allows me to understand what was going on. Because sometimes I will see the log and then understand that the attacker got in. Sometimes I would see a running process and I would see the user that actually was executing this process, and by this understand that I had an attack and who the attacker was. So I have different ways to understanding things. It differs. And one more thing that I have to mention. So just like I said that no network is perfect, because even the best network administrator is a human in the end, and he makes mistakes. So is the attackers, and there is no perfect attack. They are very complicated and sophisticated attacks, but nothing is perfect. Almost always you can find at least a piece of information that allows you to understand what was going on.
Completely the log, for instance, for forensic and claims, also in insurance market?
So again, as I said, just because, I mean, this is the first thing that comes to my mind, but I can also use the SIEM system to like read the logs that it copied from the system itself. So again, even if from the server itself the logs were deleted, I can still use the SIEM platform to read some of the logs. Okay, so there it is. I can go into log activity and start reading different logs from different machines in the network. Okay, so this is just the logs that it collected. Okay, so the logs are being saved. The copies of the logs are being saved, yeah, in another server on the network. It is actually this server over here. Okay, so this is the curator, the server that holds the application, and this is the syslog, the server that there is responsible for collecting the logs, for saving copies and correlating the data. So this is just one thing that comes to mind right now, but I'm sure that there are lots of other ways to get the information. From the scenario, so we can do questions over here, we can do questions afterwards. What do you prefer?
Okay, let me just switch to Portuguese just to explain the guys some things here, right? Isso foi uma explicação de um cenário, eu diria assim, bastante simples, né? A gente escolheu um cenário bastante simples, tem um viés um pouco técnico, vocês perceberam. Logicamente que a gente está construindo os programas que o Range vai entregar aqui, tanto um programa com profundidade técnica até bastante maior do que essa. Como o Amit falou, a gente tem uma enormidade de cenários dentro da plataforma. E a gente está construindo também os programas que complementam um curso para um profissional de negócios, um profissional executivo, muito mais no sentido de fazer o profissional entender o que acontece quando ocorre um ataque cibernético, né? Qual que é a postura de um executivo, qual que é a sensibilidade, o entendimento que ele precisa ter. A gente, logicamente, provavelmente não vai cair nessa parte tão técnica, mas aqui foi só para dar, acho que um pequeno sabor, ainda bastante simples e básico, ao nosso ver, dentro do que a gente está vendo, dentro do que a plataforma é capaz. A gente tem gente online, por isso que eu gostaria aqui de duas coisas. Eu gostaria de finalizar, principalmente para o pessoal online, porque eles não podem perguntar, mas a gente continua aqui, e aí a gente está aberto para as perguntas. E o Almir e o Anselmo conseguem, inclusive, endereçar em português também, caso vocês se sintam mais confortáveis, fiquem à vontade. Just saying to the guys that we're gonna... Pode passar para o último slide, por favor. É só para... Pro slide padrão. Isso. Está no padrão, né, Fabi? No final, o último slide. O último. Isso. Isso. É o 13? É o 13. 13, Cleiton. Não, pode pular. Pode pular. Deixa que eu faço aqui. Ok, principalmente o pessoal que está online, a gente gostaria de agradecer bastante a presença. A gente está disponível pelo website da CECyber. Quem tiver alguma pergunta, alguma questão, quiser endereçar alguma questão, pode enviar até pelo formulário de contato. A gente recebe e responde a todas as perguntas. Também é bastante fácil o e-mail, nosso e-mail geral é cecyber@cecyber.com, então não tem nenhuma grande dificuldade. E eu vou passar para o pessoal que vai vir aí responder as perguntas aí no caso. Obrigado, pessoal online, a gente continua por aqui no presencial.